It's really important to go through those things, isn't it, though? You have to fail to then succeed. Those two things don't come separately. You have to work out what you do and don't like, and that will be failure, and that's fine.
How do you think you could get people interested in that and understanding what it is?
I think you've got a really good hook because space is cool. Like being an astronaut is super cool, like probably one of the coolest jobs, right? But obviously that's very, very detached from testing a CubeSat that's going up into space. So I think they talked a little bit about this at SpaceCom as well. It's that hook of the astronaut coolness and then trying to sort of break it down into kind of interesting chunks from there.
So you're about to hear my podcast interview that I did with Chris Woodhams. I've known Chris for about 10 years now. We were originally working in the same industry. We had similar backgrounds and we were starting businesses around about the same time. This was a great conversation to me because I didn't know that much of his background. I knew what he was doing at the time, but we really got to dig into Chris's background and how he started an apprenticeship when he was leaving school, finished that apprenticeship and decided to join his dad's software business, and then the journey that he then took building that business, exploring systems engineering, and then eventually going into aerospace and the space industry. And then leading on from that, some of the opportunities that he sees now and in the future in the UK and Europe for companies to get involved in the space industry. There was a lot to this conversation. Chris was also talking about what some of his educational initiatives that he's working on, through to visiting schools for code camps and for rugby training, through to a really interesting sounding learning platform that he's developing to train systems engineers within the space industry. So there's a lot to go at here. There's a lot I learned. There's a lot I discovered about Chris. Chris is a really nice guy, so it's a really fun chat and very engaging, this conversation. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's get straight into it now with Chris. Hey, Chris, good morning. Welcome to the podcast. How's it going?
Morning. Yeah, all good, thank you. Yeah. How are you?
Perfect. Yeah, good. It's been a good week so far. I appreciate that you've pitched up in your rugby top today. What's that about? Have you been out rugbying?
Yeah, so I'm very much involved in the local club here at Harbury, so coach my eldest lad. And yesterday I was in the local school doing some rugby skills sessions as well, across from reception up to year 6. So yeah, lots of kids.
Brilliant. That must have been a bit chaotic, I can only imagine.
A bit chaotic and a nice change from the norm, though. It's nice to get out and do these things.
So that leads me in nicely to first question I wanted to talk through about what is your norm. So I was just wondering, if you're out there at a dinner party, meeting some people, how do you explain to them what you do and maybe why it matters? Because that's something I have a little bit of a challenge with. So how do you handle that?
The same actually is, a really big challenge. And unless you're talking to someone who's in the sector, in the industry, it becomes quite difficult to, not dumb it down too much, but also kind of not go too crazy with it, right? Try and keep it really simple. I typically sort of explain that we qualify products. So we help companies qualify products. So everybody kind of knows stuff gets manufactured, but people typically probably don't know the detail of how that happens. And just try and explain that, before something gets to a customer, it needs to be tested to ensure that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing and it's operating at a level of quality that that customer expects. So I try and explain that we support companies in doing that.
Keeping it at that kind of in-between level that's, pitch right without seeing people's attention like glassing over. Yeah.
You kind of you work out whether they've kind of got it or not, whether they ask any questions, right? If they ask no questions, maybe not now that.
Yeah. All right, great. So you work in aerospace and in the space industries. I would say most people probably presume you need a degree, top class grades, and have had a very kind of linear, straight line career path to get there. I think your journey was a bit different. How did you get where you are today, going back to the earlier days?
Yeah, so I came to the end of senior school, so in year 11, not particularly academic, albeit enjoyed maths, but perhaps didn't realise that at the time. And always enjoyed sort of getting involved and getting your hands on stuff and making things. So I had a real practical side that I really enjoyed. And ultimately that resulted in me applying for apprenticeships. And I didn't get one the first year, so I went into doing an MBQ and it was called a BTEC at the time in engineering. So the MBQ side was the practical side, so learning about all the machining and all that kind of stuff. And then the BTEC was the sort of theoretical side. And then in the second year of that sort of education, I got an apprenticeship, which was a four-year apprenticeship where I followed through to complete an HNC and worked 4 days a week, studied 1 day a week, and was working within a business called Goodrich, which is now pretty much Rolls-Royce. And in my role within the business, I went around all the different areas, so engineering, assembly, manufacturing, and covered all the sort of specific areas to do with engineering within that business. And then ultimately ended up really enjoying the test side of things. So kind of finished my apprenticeship in the engineering test or the test department, and developing software for automating the testing of the products that this business manufactured. So that's kind of where my kind of corporate journey got me. And I finished a mechanical engineering degree part-time as part of that as well, and got to the end of that degree and ultimately was looking for something a little bit more than what I was doing in terms of, I guess, responsibility. Wanted some more responsibility and wanted to kind of advance and move on from where I was in terms of sort of developing code and making sure things worked. And that wasn't there when I got to that point in my career. So transitioned to, well, at that point, I actually sort of said to my dad, who was running his own business, can I come and work for you for a bit whilst I look for a job? And that was kind of what the objective was at that time. But it didn't quite turn out like that. But that was the starting point of that.
So that must have been a big change. You've gone from a large company like that to working for your dad. What was going through your mind at that point then, and how did that work out?
Yeah, I think when I sort of jumped into that working with my dad, like I say, it was supposed to be a stopgap. I was just looking for jobs, but making some money at the same time so I could go out on the weekends. So I was, effectively kind of looking for jobs within the corporate world as well, right? Like it wasn't necessarily a plan for me to join business, but as things evolved with my dad, I realized that there's actually a lot of synergy between what he was doing and what I'd been doing, albeit in very different sectors. So he was very much manufacturing, process improvement type systems, software systems, whereas I was on the engineering test system side of things. So both developing software, but just in different environments. So a lot of synergy. And that then just translated into working together. And I guess in my mind, I was thinking like, wow, that's pretty cool. Like I'm working with my dad. That's awesome. It's kind of quite a nice thing. Not many people get a chance to do that. And didn't really think too much about the transition from a corporate world to a sort of small business world. That didn't really resonate at that point. It was just, I was just working, and it just evolved quite naturally. And that was really cool because I was learning loads of stuff because I was gaining the experience from my dad's side of the business, whilst also managing to carry on doing the stuff that I'd been doing for the last sort of 7 or 8 years in that sort of following on from my apprenticeship. So it all kind of happened quite naturally and didn't really have any time or maybe inclination to sort of think about that type of stuff, which is on reflection a little bit strange, I guess, not worrying about that.
Yeah, but I guess just the timing aligned. It was the right time. You had the right set of, kind of complementary skills that came together. So it worked out great. So running a business, though, is completely different from working in one. What would you say some of the biggest challenges were you had to figure out then over the next few years of that?
I think people was probably the top challenge in terms of like the leadership side of things. Like the biggest kind of expectations versus reality gap was employing people. Like thinking about it beforehand, you're like, yes, all right, just have people in your business and they do stuff and like you just have to do stuff with them and that's cool. We'll just do that. But the reality is that that's vastly different from my expectations at the time. So I think that was the biggest learning curve, going from like just me and my dad working together to taking people on. That was probably a transition of the whole of my time at Argenta probably was that challenge being sort of worked out, like probably over a 10-year period, 7-10-year period. And I think the other things were probably the transition from being very much involved in technical to not being involved in technical and delivery. So that kind of ownership change of, oh, it's cool, I'm interacting with the customer, I'm doing the work and making sure that that's the level of quality that I expect, going to putting some responsibility on other people to be doing that. And that mindset shift is one that's, I don't think you ever kind of 100% get okay with it, but it was definitely a challenge to sort of have to deal with.
Start the business, it's a great way to push yourself to do some self-development, I guess, isn't it?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Like, yeah, it's not just an evolution of the business, it's an evolution of you as a person as well. And you kind of get to work out what areas you enjoy through that, right? And you have to try them to understand whether you enjoy them or not as well. So, yeah, definitely a big part of that journey.
Just want to touch back onto the apprenticeship route that you took before. So if there was someone listening who maybe didn't feel that like a purely academic route, because I guess the standard journey for people through school is, school, you do your A-levels, you go to university, you start out in a graduate program. What would you say to people who think, maybe that route isn't for me? What's your reflections now?
I mean, I'm a massive advocate of the apprenticeship route. I think it's a fantastic way of getting that practical experience whilst also getting the educational side of things. And the education side of things, you don't have to take as far as I did. You don't have to do a degree, right? You can choose not to do that. That's fine. Because one day a week at college whilst doing a full-time job is hard. Like, it's tough. So I wouldn't give anybody any illusions that this is an easy route. Like, it's comparable in terms of how hard it is. But I feel like I don't know the other route as well. A lot of my friends did that route, but I haven't done it myself. But it's so rewarding to be able to implement things that you learn in a theoretical environment in a business, right? That's really rewarding because it's an end-to-end thing. And I think through the traditional route, if you like, you don't get to see that for a long time. So even in a graduate program, initially you're probably shadowing people and maybe not getting to do hands-on stuff, whereas with an apprenticeship you get to you give them responsibility quite early on if you kind of show that ambition and keenness to get involved in things. So yeah, I think it's definitely a route that everybody should consider, really, because it's like I say, you get that best of both worlds.
Yeah, I guess you mentioned earlier that, like, looking back, that you probably enjoyed maths when you were at school, but I guess, at that time, you don't really see the real world use of it, do you, so much? But doing that apprenticeship route, you have to use it as part of, to make things work. And then you see that this is useful in some way.
Absolutely. And I think it's also not wholly about using it. It's seeing it being used as well. So you know about maths and you learn about all the theories and stuff, but you don't necessarily connect them up, like you say, to the real world. But when you see it being used to design a fuel pump or a fuel metering unit that goes onto a jet engine, that's like the light bulb moment, isn't it? It's the moment that you kind of connect those. That's why I learned that, right? That's why I learned that, because I need to be able to understand how the flow of the stuff goes through that component.
So just again, thinking about some of those earlier days of your career and how you felt about success, what would you have said that success would have looked for you back then? And would you say that's changed over time?
100%. I think when I started out in my apprenticeship, success for me was getting a degree. And that was probably just a reflection of the way people communicated career progression at school and within any kind of learning environment. That was kind of the pinnacle of your education, was to get to that point. And definitely that's changed now. I think for me now, success is being able to translate a set of requirements for something into a deliverable solution. Like that's the value for me. And I think additional value along the way would be getting people involved in that process and them evolving over that process as well. So the value for me is getting something at the end that meets what you or exceeds what you set out to achieve, and it should make people coming along that journey with you and getting better as a result of coming through it with it. So I think those are definitely the two things that I focus on now in terms of success.
I think that's interesting. Yeah, particularly that second one about making sure you bring people along with you and, you're helping them to grow as well. Yeah, that's interesting. So looking back, would you say that there were any points that maybe felt like failures at the time, but in retrospect, you would say that they've set you on a better path for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. There was one moment in my apprenticeship where I was adamant that I needed to quit the apprenticeship and go and do a degree. And it was a completely viable option, just where I was at in my sort of academic studies, like I could have easily gone and got a degree place. And I had a dead serious conversation with my family, with my sort of apprentice coordinator about quitting. And at the time, I was thinking that it's a failure that I haven't got to university. And in reality, in reflection, that's the complete opposite. Right, that's definitely not a failure. That's just something that didn't work for me. Like that academic route didn't work for me, and that's fine, because you can either find another way of getting to that point, or you could adjust what you focus on and what you set as your end goal. So I think it's really important to go through those things, isn't it? Though you have to fail to then succeed. Like it doesn't; those two things don't come separately. You have to work out what you do and don't like, and that will be failure, and that's fine. I think one of the things I was going to touch on later on, but I think it's quite important to bring up now. Like when I was at Argenta, we had a sort of phrase to success: you would celebrate failure, because I think it's the way that you start your sort of progression to learning and developing, and that's you've got to be sensible with that, right? Like there's obviously occasions where that doesn't apply, but there's also a ton of places where you can apply that theory. And we used to have a daily huddle. And as part of our daily huddle, we'd say, right, anybody got any failures we want to celebrate? And we're talking things like, oh, I did this thing with this customer, I sent them this and probably shouldn't have done that. That was probably a failure on my part. And people being able to vocalize that is super important, to be able to then get everybody's opinion to improve. And it's not the idea that people are then sort of pointing fingers and having a bit of a go at that person. The idea is that you develop from that. And the people that are listening to that and learning, as well as the person who made the mistake. So yeah, I think failures are a super important part of a culture within a business.
Yeah, well, and if you don't make failures or make mistakes, you're not innovating, or you're not trying new stuff. You're just playing safe, aren't you? So yeah,
you can't really get anywhere without it.
So if you're enjoying this episode, please give us a follow on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That would help us to keep bringing authentic manufacturing conversations with the people who are shaping our industry. Thank you. I want to jump into a quick fire section that's called Myths or Truths. So I'll just throw out some beliefs. Maybe some may be sounding kind of sensible, some may be a bit out there, but just interested in your feelings on these. So, do you need a university degree to work in aerospace?
No, absolutely not. I mean, you may do later on in your career, but at the start, you don't. 100%. You can start at a point where you don't need it. 100%.
The space industry is only for massive corporations like NASA, SpaceX, or kind of government organizations.
Definitely a myth. A lot of the big innovations come from small companies. They may grow into bigger companies, but I think a lot of things start with small businesses.
What about this? Engineering is mainly about getting the technical things right. Soft skills and dealing with people don't really matter.
Myth, definitely a myth. I think I'll later on, like, culture is one of the most important things within a business, and regardless of what you're doing, it's top priority.
So do you think that's an important thing for technical, more focused people 100%. To develop and to grow on?
Almost more important, right? Because engineers typically are, and I'm going to stereotype a little bit here, like they're typically very like insular, and they're typically kind of very focused on the detail, and maybe kind of interactions and social interactions and things like that aren't sort of their stronger points. So I think making sure that you're focusing on that and bringing that out of people is way more important within that environment.
You have to follow a straight career path to succeed.
Absolute myth. Yeah, there's nothing in that at all. I think it's you have to try different things, and that involves you going left, right, backwards a bit, maybe forwards a bit, and all over the place. You have to do that to work it out.
Okay, all right. We're not doing very well with the truths here, are we? We're a bit myth heavy here. Work-life balance is difficult in kind of high-stake industries like aerospace and space.
I think this is in between. Is there an in between? Because I think there's a bit of truth.
If you can explain it, justify it, go for it. Why do you think that's in between?
Because I think it's and I think maybe this is the case in a lot of sectors, industries, jobs. Like it ebbs and flows, doesn't it? So you'll have deliverables that are maybe way in the future. So you have that period where you're kind of working away and quite comfortable, and things are nice and happy, and then you come to a deliverable and things kind of spike in one direction. You've got to put some extra time in. The reality of that is that it's very difficult sometimes to manage projects to avoid that, because there's so much in engineering, and especially in innovative engineering, there's a lot of uncertainty. So uncertainty is very hard to manage in terms of people's time and timelines and all that kind of stuff. So we've had it recently where we've had to, just through the way things have gone and unexpected things that have gone along in this project, we've had to put a bit more graft in towards a certain point in the project. So I think work-life balance is mega important, but at some points the work side of things has to be the thing that takes a bit of focus, as long as you can then balance that out later on. So work-life balance might be that you're grafting really hard for a little bit, but then you're actually chilling for quite a bit of time after that. Right? So as long as you can get that balance, when you do go one side, when you do go heavy on the work side of things, there's a balance the other side of that says, okay, we've had a really tough time. Let's take a bit of time to recognise that and maybe take a little bit of a break and chill.
Yeah, or go into your school and deal with 200 kids, try to teach them how to throw a rugby ball.
Yeah, exactly. It's different for everybody, right?
Taking time off sets you back in your career.
So do you mean like a career break, or like
I suppose so.
Couple of weeks?
Yeah, well,
career break.
Interpret it however you want to, I suppose. Yeah, I was thinking more of a career break, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I think it's almost, it's not, the career break thing is not essential, but I think taking breaks is definitely essential, because you don't stop thinking about stuff just because you're on holiday. Everybody knows that, right? You could be lying on the beach and you'd be like, yes, that's exactly what I need to do on that thing that I was doing last week. So I think, and in the longer period of time you have off, I think that the sort of the bigger the possibility of something like that happening, right? Because, and sometimes you talked about the straight line thing, and sometimes you need that career break just to work out whether you need to go left or right, or maybe you need to go back a little bit. So I think they're really important if it's applicable to your scenario.
Yeah, that time to away from the thick of it and let you see the wood for the trees and decide what's next. Yeah, that's essential. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is an out there one. All space companies are working towards putting people onto the moon or onto Mars.
Myth. So I was at Spacecom this week, the event. So, and there's lots of stuff they were talking about there. There definitely like human space travel was a big topic. I was in the keynote with Professor Brian Cox, and Richard Branson was he dialed in, and they were talking a little bit about his sort of Virgin Galactic stuff, and like it sounds super cool, and like Brian Cox is a brilliant speaker, and he just gets you thinking about stuff. It's just crazy. Like the science that's out there is absolutely mental, and it's really inspiring as well. So yeah, it's definitely a myth, because the stuff that Brian Cox was talking about was just really scientific and sort of potentially game changing in terms of understanding how the world came to be about. So yeah, definite myth, and there's loads and loads of cool stuff going on.
Over the next, say, 5 to 10 years, what do you think is going to change most in the aerospace space industry within this systems engineering space? What do you see coming up? Do you think AI is going to take our jobs in this space?
No, I don't think it is. I think AI is going to be something that complements most sectors, to be honest. It's complementing the work I do at the moment. Like I use AI quite a bit to not necessarily on technical things at the moment, but I can see the value of it on technical things. So I think it's about embracing AI and making sure that you're using it. And the way that we use it at Lat51 is as an additional employee, basically. So you treat an AI model as an employee. You ask them questions and you check their work. So in that, if you get into that mindset, you talk to the models in that way, you can get some really, really effective results. So I definitely think AI is going to be something that is complementary rather than going to be causing any kind of job losses.
Yeah, do you think it's there's a bright future for the industry over the next kind of decade or so?
Yeah, and it's been quite timely attending Spacecom as well, because it's going to be all about the number of satellites or satellites that are going to be in orbit. That's going to be increasing massively, and that not only increases opportunity for sort of scientific gain, but it also increases the challenges that come along with that. Like we all know about sort of space debris. So the more stuff that's up there, the more possibility there is for collisions and all that kind of stuff. So there's lots of challenges that are going to need to be solved around that to make sure that it's effective and delivers the things that we need it to deliver by increasing the number of satellites up there. So yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting how things develop over time as we increase the amount of satellites we're putting into orbit.
So what do you think some of the opportunities are for, for people who'd like to start working in the space sector? Where would you start looking?
I think it's got to start with tests, and I'm very close to that, and I'm maybe biased, but I think it's
maybe a little bit biased, yeah.
Because all of these things that are going up into space, no matter what it is, from if it's the small little CubeSat or a huge satellite, like they all need to be qualified, and you need to make sure they're doing what they're doing. But there's also some really, really, really interesting stuff going on. So I think in terms of the experimental side, like for anybody who's in that kind of mindset, there's loads of opportunity to get involved in companies that are doing some seriously cool stuff. But if you're of the mindset of the kind of test engineer and more sort of build manufacture side, there's also going to be lots of opportunity there. Like I say, the number of satellites is increasing, therefore there's going to need to be more people building them, testing them, qualifying them and launching them. So I think, yeah, there's plenty out there, and I think the scale will be the thing that's unknown as to whether it's big or this big.
How big it is, yeah. Yeah. So for you personally, what's driving you forward in this industry? What impact would you like to make in the space industry?
I think it comes back to the STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and maths aspect, being able to kind of support addressing that, building that capability within this sector, not necessarily just this sector, right? It definitely expands out across others, but being able to sort of do that is a real personal ambition, drive for me. And being able to do that in the way that we are at the moment, I think is going to be one of the most rewarding things that I'm going to be involved in. And if we can sort of start to, so at the moment we're obviously aiming at sort of graduate level and people who are transitioning into the sector. If we can sort of bring that lower down, so into sort of higher education and further education, and even maybe sort of lower down than that as well, that would be a real, I guess, tick in the box for me.
Yeah. Do you think there's a chance? I was just wondering how you'd make that attractive to those kind of younger people. How would you? Yeah, and it maybe goes back to that question early on about how do you explain what you do at a dinner party? How do you think you could get people interested in that and understanding what it is?
Yeah, I think you've got a really good hook because space is cool. Like space is just cool. Like being an astronaut is super cool. Like probably one of the coolest jobs, right? But obviously that's very, very detached from testing a CubeSat that's going up into space. So I think it's about, and I think they talked a little bit about this at SpaceCom as well, it's that hook of the astronaut coolness and then trying to sort of break it down into kind of interesting chunks from there. Because I think you've got this thing out there that people just know nothing about. And that can be broken down into, scientific experiments that need this instrument that then need this body to travel on to get up there and this process to launch it, all that kind of stuff. So I think you can quite easily kind of connect the astronaut coolness all the way down to whatever level you want to in terms of getting people engaged in it.
Yeah, borrow a bit of coolness, basically, from...
Always.
Yeah.
Doing all my life.
Yeah. Got to take it where you can. Yeah, that's right. Thanks a lot for today. Really interesting conversation. Great to hear about what you're working on there. What I just want to leave everyone with one final takeaway, really. So what would you say is one mindset shift or habit that people could adopt to create more opportunities in their careers? Because, you've created a lot of opportunities, a lot of different routes. Be really interested in your take on that.
I think you've got to focus on culture, whatever level you're at as well, really. I think everybody has an ability to contribute to that. And there's a fantastic tool called the Culture Design Canvas that breaks this down into probably 8 or 10 blocks. And the idea of it is that it gives you the ability to map out all aspects of your culture. And that's from sort of rituals, whether that's to do with, team nights, days out, it's celebrating failures that we talked about earlier, or building sort of good news into how you sort of have your meetings. And then talked about like developing, how do you manage feedback? Because feedback's a really important thing, isn't it? That's happening all the time. How do you encourage people to engage in that? So that canvas starts to build up what your culture looks like, and it has to be based on your values. So it has to come from your values and the behaviors that enable those values to be kind of realized. So I think, yeah, definitely my parting words would be focus on culture. It doesn't matter if you're in leadership or not. Like, you have to have an input to it, and you can drive it as a junior or a graduate or anybody. Like, you could push that forward. I think it's one of the things that keeps teams being effective.
Yeah, it's like setting the kind of the North Star and the direction for the team to go in, and having a clear path that you can all follow.
100%. And as long as the leadership are following those behaviours that are defined by that culture, it makes it much easier for them, the people that are working within other teams, to sort of follow it. Like you say, that North Star.
Really good. I like it, Chris. I'm going to look up the culture design canvas as well, because that sounds good to geek out on for a bit. All right, thanks for your time, Chris. Really great to hear about you. Where can people find out more about you?
So Lat51 Space Systems are on LinkedIn. I'm Chris Woodhams on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, reach out to me on there and we'll connect up.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. We'll pop some links in for that stuff.
Yeah, thanks very much for the invite. I really appreciate having that chat. It's been really valuable from my side as well.